You're kneeling in the backyard at midnight with a flashlight, staring at a tree stump you've been meaning to dig out for 3 years. You finally brought the shovel, but instead of digging, you're just sitting there, beam pointed at the dirt, because you've just realized something uncomfortable. The eclipse tonight has a window, a few precise minutes, and somehow that ticking clock in the sky is what finally made you look at the ticking clock in your own backyard. Here's the part that stops your hand on the shovel handle. The roots under this stump have had 3 years to spread wherever they wanted, and they did without asking you a single time. You didn't decide to let them grow that far, you just never decided to stop them. You came out here thinking tonight was about finally making a choice. It isn't. Tonight is about discovering the choice already made itself 3 years ago, the night you first said, later. You believe indecision is a pause, a neutral holding pattern where nothing happens until you act. It isn't. Indecision is itself an action, quietly rerouting your life while you wait for a clearer sign, and by the time you notice, the roots have already gone somewhere you didn't choose. Think about how many times you've told yourself, "I'll decide when I know more," even though the extra information never actually shows up. Notice the strange relief that floods in every time a decision gets pushed off, and how easily you've mistaken that relief for wisdom. Notice how certain situations in your life have quietly resolved themselves in directions you never agreed to, and you called it fate instead of what it actually was, a default. Not deciding was never a way of avoiding the fork in the road. It was the decision to take whichever path required the least resistance from you, and that path has been laying down roots the entire time you thought you were standing still. So tonight, before the eclipse peaks, name one thing you've been waiting on for over a month. Then write down what has already happened as a result of that waiting, not what might happen, what already has. Not the future, the record. At 4 degrees and 51 minutes, the moon in Pisces slides fully into shadow for a handful of exact minutes, and that shadow doesn't erase anything. It exposes the parts of your emotional life you've kept blurred on purpose. A partial eclipse means partial visibility, and that's the trap hiding in plain sight. You get just enough light to see the outline of what you've been avoiding, not enough to pretend you never saw it. What existed before tonight gets pulled into view tonight, nothing more, nothing less. And by morning, the excuse that you weren't sure yet stops holding any water at all. So, look at that shovel in your hand. Look at that stump. The truth is, the digging already started, back when you first walked past it and told yourself there was no rush. 12 signs are carrying some version of this exact standoff right now. Someone kneeling in their own dark flashlight pointed at a decision they thought they hadn't made yet. We're not covering all 12 in one sitting that would blur every single one of them into noise. We're covering them across 4 separate waves, a few signs at a time, so each story gets the same steady light this one just got. Yours might be next. Aries, you are standing at a fork in a hiking trail at dusk, both paths already half dark, and you have been standing there so long your legs have gone stiff. You have told yourself this waiting is patience. It is not. It is fear of choosing wrong in front of witnesses. So you keep asking for one more sign before you commit to the job, the move, the person, and every time a sign actually shows up, you find a reason it was not quite clear enough. Here is what this eclipse drags into the light. Real boldness would have moved already. What you have been doing is waiting for the moment to choose itself, so you never have to own what happens next. That comfort ends tonight. Pick the path with worse visibility. Do it tonight, and do not explain your reasoning to anyone first. The uncertainty will not disappear, but the stiffness in your legs will, the second you start walking. And what you get back is movement itself, the kind you forgot was even available to you. You weren't waiting for clarity. You were waiting for permission to stop being brave. Every month you stall costs you the version of this decision that was still cheap to make. Taurus, you are repotting the same plant for the 3rd year, telling yourself it just needs more time, while its roots have already cracked the container. You call this stillness loyalty. It is actually fear that any motion means losing the little ground you have secured. So you renew the lease, the routine, the relationship status you've outgrown, not because it fits, but because renewing needs no conversation. This eclipse touches the fixed ground under your feet and shows you plainly. That container was never going to hold what is growing underneath it. Choose the bigger pot tonight, even though the plant looks fine exactly as it is. The roots stop straining against the walls the moment there is room to spread. What you regain is rest, the real kind, not the frozen kind you've been calling stability. The crack happened months ago. You just kept watering it like it hadn't. Gemini. You are texting two different replies to the same message, switching between tabs, unable to send either one. You keep both doors cracked open, two jobs half considered, two people half chosen, and you call it flexibility. It is not. Closing one door feels like admitting the other was always the weaker choice. You are one of the signs this eclipse touches most directly, and it narrows your gift for options on purpose tonight, not as punishment, as mercy. Delete one draft completely before midnight. No copy saved. The remaining option stops feeling like a compromise the instant the other one is gone. What you regain is voice, one clear voice instead of two competing whispers. You didn't want two options. You wanted to never be wrong. So which door have you actually been living behind, and which one have you just been keeping unlocked, in case? Cancer, there's a car, and there's you inside it, keys resting in your lap, engine off, parked outside a house you used to call home. The porch light hasn't turned on in weeks, but you keep watching for it anyway, like it might flick on just because you've been patient enough, quiet enough, good enough at waiting. This is the thing you do instead of grieving. You keep the door unlocked. You keep the spare key hidden where it's always been. You keep the old number saved under the same name, like nothing ended, like it's all just paused. You tell yourself this is tenderness. It isn't, not entirely. Tonight the moon, the very light that rules you, goes dark in Pisces, and something in that darkness makes the truth impossible to keep dressed up. You weren't protecting the relationship by waiting. You were protecting yourself from being the one who closed the door. So here's what happens if you turn the key. You drive away tonight without a signal, without the light turning on, without permission from anyone else's timeline. The grief comes faster that way, sharper, sooner than you wanted, but so does the version of you that isn't sitting in a parked car anymore. Every night spent waiting outside that house was a night you weren't home in the life that's actually yours. What you regain when you finally drive off is intimacy, real intimacy, the kind you can only have with someone who knows exactly where they stand with you, starting with yourself. Leo, picture the moment right before your name gets called backstage, the audition you almost didn't sign up for, and your feet simply refuse to move. This isn't stage fright. You've stood in front of bigger rooms than this one. What stops you is smaller and older. You've built a habit of wanting things quietly enough that failure can never quite reach you. You let other people assign you their version of your ambition because defending your own version, the real one, means it can be watched failing in front of an audience. But this eclipse doesn't wait for you to feel ready backstage. It strips the performance down to one unguarded second, and in that second the want you've been hiding behind applause stands there with nowhere left to go. You weren't afraid of losing tonight. You were afraid of wanting something openly and being seen wanting it. So walk out, say the real thing, not the safer, rehearsed line you brought as a decoy. The silence that follows will feel unbearable for a moment, and then it won't, because at least it's honest, and honesty doesn't ask you to perform. Every borrowed ambition you carried instead of your own cost you a year you don't get to perform again. Every circle you half joined cost you the belonging you kept insisting you didn't need. Pisces, this one is yours before it's anyone else's. You're standing in your own kitchen at 2 in the morning, under the exact moon this eclipse touches first, holding two different futures like they're both still hypothetical, still soft, still avoidable. You wait for a feeling clear enough to act on, but it never fully arrives.